First on your far left is Ananga Manjari. Okay, thank you for coming. She's come from Florida, Alachua, Florida. Long way. So Ananga Manjari has dedicated her life to the theological teachings of the Vedas and their spiritual practices for 53 years under the guidance of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. As an interfaith reverend doctor, counselor, and inspirational speaker, she shares her insights from a broad spiritual perspective that combines Western thoughts and experiences with profound ancient Vedic teachings. She offers us a practical and fresh perspective on how to live bhakti, love, in the present day. I know she's written more, but we started late, so thank you for that. Next on the panel is Kusha Devi Dasi, coming to us from Hawaii. Aloha. Kusha was initiated by Prabhupada in Hawaii in 1970, and she is the acting president of the ISKCON Hawaii Temple. It's not an easy task to be president of any ISKCON temple, but she has done a remarkable job there. Kusha's words of encouragement to all female disciples are, be happy, celebrate the feminine. Do not hide your light under a basket and shine for Srila Prabhupada. Malati Devi Dasi, coming to us from West Virginia, Moundsville. New Vrindavan, as we commonly know it within ISKCON. Malati Devi Dasi was initiated in 1967 in San Francisco, and she was the first lady in ISKCON to serve as a temple president as well as a GBC member. So let's first of all get a round of applause, get some energy going here. Thank you for your enthusiasm. Let's start with Malati, because she, I think, is the elder states lady here.
Yesterday, many people had asked me, I didn't finish the story, how I had adopted a young girl, my husband, and we were 22, she was 16. Prabhupada suggested that maybe we could adopt her so she could come to the temple and be with the devotees, and that happened. So that girl's name at the time was Sarah, and she became Saradia. And I always liked the name Sarah, so Sarah Saradia. My daughter was born on Saradia's birthday, June 17th, and she became Saraswati. So on the way to London, she came with us, but she wasn't sure if she would come the whole way or not. She had a choice. She could stay in Boston and study painting under Jadharani, who's now somebody else, and or she could come with us. Our first stop, as mentioned, was Montreal, and there was an intervention in the form of Cupid's arrow pinging her heart when a tall, handsome young brahmachari named Vakuntana showed up. So he goes to Prabhupada, Swamiji. He goes, Swamiji, I like that boy. And he goes, do you want to marry him? She goes, yes. And he said, all right, but first you have to finish school. So she stayed in Boston, finished school, and then...
She was how old? What was the age at that time?
By then she's 17.
17. Okay.
And, but by the marriage, 18. But there is a very famous, first a famous photo of all of us on the way to UK, and she is there. We all got Gayatri Mantra. Then in Boston, there is a marriage photo, and you see Saradia and Vaikuntanath and Rukmini and Bhardwaj. That marriage photo, very famous one.
Okay.
And one more quick thing, though.
Okay.
Just, because this is about compassion, so can I tell that instead of the
Yes.
one you're suggesting? So, she's married. Her and her husband, very young couple, they went to break ground in Trinidad. And there were no other devotees there at the time. And it received a lot of attention because they would go to the downtown area, what's it called, Port-au-Prince, something like that, do Harinam. And each day they would go and come back, and it received attention in the form of pictures in the newspaper, etc. They lived a little outside the town, and they had to take a bus. So they came back one day, and they saw the gate was not fully closed. So it was like a little, like what happened here. And they went in the house, and there was 5 men, and they all had knives, and they attacked them. They put the knives at their throat, and each one of these 5 men raped that young girl. Not so many people know this story. So he, like Kuntanath, arranged to immediately send her to New York, get her out of Trinidad. And in those days, we didn't talk about feelings. We didn't even know if we had them, you know. No, it wasn't funny. There was no talking, so there was no empathy. There was nothing, you know. So she's there. Nobody knew why. I'm in Delhi. My husband, Shamsundar, was serving Prabhupada as a secretary. We just completed a big program. And I went up on the roof to the place where we were staying, and I was surprised. Prabhupada was up there getting his massage in the sun. So I just paused in the overhang. You know, I'm sitting there, and I didn't think he saw me. He's getting the massage, Shamsundar's reading him the mail, and sometimes if it was a personal letter, he would hand it to him directly. So this letter went directly to Prabhupada's hand. And he suddenly turns, and I had no idea that he knew I was there, which shows you should never underestimate Prabhupada's knowledge and knowing. So he turns and he calls me over, and he hands me this letter, and he says, "Your daughter." When he said "your daughter," I knew he wasn't talking about Saraswati. He called Saradia my daughter, and he called my daughter "your child." So I knew this was going to be about Saradia. And in it was from Vaikuntha explaining what happened. So I'm reading this horrific story, and I look up, and Prabhupada has tears coming out of both eyes. I'm telling this story because if there's ever any doubt, because some people have this doubt, that maybe he was a little misogynistic, no. That's why we wrote Bond of Love, Srila Prabhupada and his daughters, which is a story of there's about 350 interviews, and the book is almost 600 pages, and it's from his daughters, our experiences. So that very infamous, there's just a couple of words about, it appears to say women like to be raped. So from that, people get their brains twisted. But I can say, from my experience, when he heard about one of his young daughters being raped, both eyes had tears flowing down.
Amazing. Amazing. Kusha, you told me once a story about Prabhupada explaining about, I think one of the Matajis, Jadharani, I think, was sick. Or maybe you were sick? But
Jadharani.
Okay.
She was in Hawaii.
So explain about the compassion, about the 4 priorities in a devotee's life.
Srila Prabhupada had handwritten a sign on a brown paper bag, and he wrote, number 1, health, number 2, chanting, number 3, service, and number 4, reading. He was, Jadharani was not, she's a wonderful devotee, but she didn't have common sense, and she would do things in excess. So Srila Prabhupada was trying to train her to take care of her body better. So he was literally telling her that the only thing she could do was chant and take care of her health. He was not allowing her to do anything else because she was overdoing things. So I also had something similar. I was cooking for Prabhupada, and I was living in the temple, and I had gotten my son bit me, he was like 1, accidentally I got a breast infection. So in cooking, I was also cooking jackfruit for the first time, which was, if anybody knows anything about cooking jackfruit, it's hard. And Jayashree was there, actually. Jayashree trained me in Krishna consciousness. She was very merciful. But so I was working really hard to slaughter this jackfruit, which you have to get oil and everything and do. And I was cooking all these preparations, things I didn't ever even know about, how to cook, like dahi vada. I was learning on the job. And I oversalted. And boy, oh boy, that's something you don't want to do when you're cooking for Srila Prabhupada. So, and I brought everything into Srila Prabhupada, and the word came, because I didn't know you were supposed to taste it. I thought you could never taste anything. And I only just recently heard that you could taste something. So all this time I never knew that. I thought everything was first for Krishna, and you couldn't sample to see if you'd done a good job or not. Well, anyway, I gave the prasad to Srila Prabhupada, and he said, no salt. In the future, I want no salt. I'll add. And then the next day, this is his compassion upon me, he turned the whole thing around in class the next day. He used it as an example in Bhagavatam class. He said, if you over-endeavor, and this was like the Jadharani story, if you're over-endeavoring, it's just like over-salting. It ruins everything. And it's like you think you're the doer, and you what are you doing it for? Is it for devotion? Where's the love? Or are you over-endeavoring? Better to add less salt, he said. That would be better. So I saw how Srila Prabhupada, nobody knew except for me, I was shrinking into a tiny little shrinking violet on the side. Oh my goodness. But then another part of me was saying, Prabhupada can take anything and make it a point of wisdom. He can take one thing and teach you another thing at the same time. Prabhupada could do all kinds of things all at the same time. Who can do this? I was actually mesmerized and totally amazed at his compassion to take something difficult and make it a teaching point. And so I only could teach because my infection cook for 3 days, and my infection got the best of me. But Prabhupada was taking unsalted and just doing it himself. But it taught me something. It was so serious because I had been one of those workaholic over-endeavorers, and I had to step back from it and have a moment to think about that, and then come back at it from a perspective of love and devotion.
Very good. Thank you very much. Great story. Compassion. Thinking of our health first. Otherwise, how can you do your service? Now, Nagamandri, you told me a story about when you were married to Hridayananda, and you came to Los Angeles to ask Prabhupada's permission for him to take sannyas. Can you tell that to everyone, and the story of compassion that Prabhupada had for you?
Yes, okay. So we were very excited because I guess it was sannyas fever in the movement at the time in 1972. And we thought, yes, how we can enhance both of our preaching for Prabhupada. So this is what we were thinking, and we came here very enthusiastic to meet with him. And he knew we were meeting with him. So when we walked in his room, he said, so what do you want? And Hridayananda, being always the philosophical one, started to explain, Srila Prabhupada, it's explained in the Vedas that that one is first a brahmachari with training, and then he becomes a grihasta, and then after that he takes vanaprastha and then sannyas. So I'm asking if I can take sannyas. Of course, we were only married 1 year. And the whole time we were separate in the temple, just doing service basically. So it wasn't like we never cooked together or did anything like that. So those days was like that. So anyway, so Prabhupada, is it okay if I take sannyas? And he just looked at us and then he said, does your wife agree? And I'm like behind and saying, yes, Srila Prabhupada, I agree. And he goes, yes, Prabhupada, she agrees. And then he looked up and then he said, then he looked right at us and moved forward and he said, sometimes it is difficult. And he looked very serious, difficult. And I was thinking, when he said that, I was thinking, oh yeah, it'll be difficult, but you know, we're going to have Prabhupada's blessing, so I mean, we can do anything with that. You know, like as long as he approves, then it's going to be fine, you know, so we have his protection. That's what I was thinking. And so then he didn't say anything for a while, and some other devotees came in the room doing some other things and talking to Prabhupada, interrupting in a way. And then, so Hridayananda turned to me and said, well, do you think Prabhupada, was that yes or no? All he said was, it's difficult. So I said, well, maybe you should ask him again. So then he found a moment in between the conversations. So Srila Prabhupada, is it all right then? We were like little kids. I was 18, and he was, I think, 24, something like that. So Prabhupada again said, does your wife agree? He said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, she agrees. And yes, Srila Prabhupada, I agree. And then again they got interrupted. So then we all went into the other room, and there was some other things going on about the road show. We were listening, I'll just say this very briefly, we were listening to the road show music with guitars and like that, and it was loud, heavy rock and roll. And Prabhupada said, what are they saying? Because you could hardly understand. And someone said, oh, Prabhupada, they're saying you're not that body. You know, you're not that body. You are pure spirit soul. So he said, okay. And then he's listening. He goes, is that Vishnu Jana singing? And they go, yes, Prabhupada, that's Vishnu Jana singing. And then Prabhupada said, anyone who hears his voice will become a devotee. So that's how he acknowledged that I think it's, for me, it's not just Vishnu Jana or just certain devotees that he meant when he said these things. It was the intention. If the person's intention is good and pure and just trying to spread Krishna consciousness in the same mood of Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya, then they will have the effect, because that effect is coming from the Lord Chaitanya. And so anyway, yeah. So he approved of that, and other times anyway. So then we all stood up because we were going to leave, and Prabhupada turned to both of us again, and as if the conversation had never was interrupted, and he says, so does your wife agree? Third time. Wow. And again, Hridayananda said, yes, Prabhupada, she agrees. And again, I nodded and saying, yes, Prabhupada, I agree. And then Prabhupada kind of hit him on the back and said, you have a very good wife because she agrees. And people laughed a little, a few devotees that were there. And then he came to me with the most unfathomable compassion in his eyes. He came over very close to me and he said, so what do you want to do? Like, what do I want to do? I was thinking I'm taking sannyas too. I mean, I was thinking I'm going to go travel and preach and, you know, just do what I was doing, give classes, lead kirtans. And so I was very shocked at this, and I wasn't sure how to answer. And I took my time, and in my mind, you know how the mind is much speedy than our speaking or our thoughts. Our actions. So I actually, to take the time, I moved back from him because he was very close to me. What do you want to do with this compassion? And I thought, whoa, Prabhupada is the Jagat Guru. He's the spiritual master of the universe. Whatever I ask for right now, I'm going to get it. It's like the genie in the bottle. It's like, this is magic. Like I know that I'm going to get whatever I want. So what do I want? And my mind raced like they show in the movies, millions of lifetimes going back. And I was going back, I remember thinking tricycles, ice cream, horses, and I mean, like a child. I was a child, really, but I was thinking those are all the things I ever wanted. And then all of a sudden I just went, oh, Prabhupada, just to take the time. I actually hesitated like this. I said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, I just, and I'm moving back and I go, I just want to be Krishna conscious. And when it came out, it was like wasn't what I was thinking. It wasn't in my head. None of that was in my head. And this, I just want to be Krishna. I almost saw the words pouring out of my mouth. And then I looked at him and he looked back like this at me. And you know how when an artist is looking at a painting that they've done, they kind of take a moment to look back and they kind of go like this, oh, is everything in order? Or when you dress the deities, you kind of take a minute to look back, is everything in order, you know? And Prabhupada looked at me like that, like he looked back at me like an artist. And I thought, he did this to me. He reached in my heart. He reached in my heart subtly and grabbed those words out from somewhere. And he did that. So I realized it was him who did it because it was like the artist painting the picture. And he did it. So then he looked back and he smiled and he said, you're already Krishna conscious. And he just went, boom, like this. And what he meant, and what I really understood, even at that moment, I thought, wow, he's doing that to all of us, just with his womb, like just a little brush of his hand, like you're already Krishna conscious. And that's what he's doing to all of us. So that's the power of his compassion. The compassion is his compassion and humility is his power. And sometimes we think, you know, oh, we have to show our power by being heavy or strong or loud or, you know, convincing and, you know, demanding or controlling or, being in charge of things. But actually, for a saintly person, their power is in their empathy for others, their compassion. He saw me as a little girl and he was like, what do you want to do? I'll give you anything you want. And then he pulled those words out of me so that I could actually get the right thing. So he's doing that for everyone. You're already Krishna conscious. Just, So thank you.
Excellent. Very good story.
Right after she took sannyas, she came to the Hawaii temple. And she was so fired up. I was just like having such a good time being with her. Her beads broke. I restrung them from her. I was so excited to hang out with the Nanga. She was just like exuding Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. Malati, you have a famous story about Prabhupada's compassion regarding when Shamashundar was carving the first Jagannath deities. Can you tell us that story?
Hare Krishna. So the first large deities of Lord Jagannath, which were, well, you can see them in Berkeley. Those are the original ones. But I had found some smaller ones, not knowing what they were, what it was. And Prabhupada made obeisances when they were brought. That was just the first one. Jagannath made obeisances. Who's brought? They said, oh, Malati, I'll bring her. And I went upstairs to his room, and he asked me where I got that. You got, yes. He said, were there others? And yes, lots, because I was thinking there were these wooden barrels with a bunch of little figurines, and there were 3 wooden barrels, 1 for each. So yes, lots. And he remained very sober. You know, like one time he instructed Brahmananda Prabhu, the devotees don't get excited. Sometimes we say, oh, I'm so excited. He says, that's the mundane people, they get excited. Devotees, we're enthusiastic, we look forward to, you know, this type of thing. So he remained very sober, and he goes, no, 2 others different. So I remembered the white face, the yellow face. I said, yes, and he said, bring them. And then he points to the little figure of Jagannath. He goes, this is Jagannath. Jagannath means Lord of the universe. This is Krishna. And then he turned to Shamsundar, and he said, can you carve large size? And he indicated what became the standard height at that time. Immediately, Shamsundar agreed. Again, here comes the empowerment. He liked working with wood, but it was more in a constructive way, but now this would be carving, sculpture. Immediately agreed. And he told us how the Lord appeared in that wooden form, which was from a log coming from the ocean. So we became convinced we had to go and find a log that came in from the ocean, which was not difficult because we're in San Francisco, which is by the ocean, and there is like these salvage yard places. So we found a large log. At that time, we were living on Haight Street, right across the street from Buena Vista Park. And we had a little, it wasn't a real balcony, it was just the overhang of the business. We were on the first floor, I guess in America it's ground floor, 1, 2, so we're on the second floor. Beneath was a laundry, dry cleaner laundry. So they have this overhang, like the roof that went over to that entry. We would go out using the roof like a balcony. So he first started carving there, getting the wood to size. And then when the sizes, he then cut it into 3 pieces, and then he brought it inside. And he was purposely taking his time doing it because Prabhupada had said he would stay in San Francisco until Shamsundar finished carving. So Shamsundar purposely was going a little slow to keep Prabhupada's presence in San Francisco, but he would ask, how's it coming? And he would, yeah, it's coming. So he made a surprise visit. The door knocked, I opened the door, and there was Srila Prabhupada and 2 of the younger boys from the temple. And he says, I've come to see Shamsundar, and Shamsundar's around the corner, and the 3 of them were lined up. He's not expecting Prabhupada. And, he says, I've come to see how you're doing. On the top, it was either Subhadra or Balaram, according to, anyway, there was a little box. And Prabhupada picks up his cane, he goes, what is in the box? And I remember that little alcove where he was carving. It wasn't, there weren't any special lighting, so it was a little dim, but you could see Shamsundar was very red-faced because that little box was a little box of cigarettes. And Shamsundar said, I'm so sorry, Swamiji, that's cigarettes. Now, you would think he might blow up, What are you doing? Yeah. He just looked, he goes, yes, it's very difficult to give up smoking, difficult habit. So, just smoke 1 less every day until finished. And when he said finished, he took his cane and knocked that box, sent it flying. And Shamsundar was able to follow that. So very compassionate. It was clear he wasn't saying, it's okay, he wasn't like, namby-pamby about it. He didn't blow up. He acknowledged it was difficult, but he gave a solution.
Very good. Thank you. Great. Kusha, could you hand the mic to Kusha? You told me a story about your name, and that you had some desire for Kusha. And how is Prabhupada's compassion related to your name?
I heard Bhardaraj's story too about, we all had Indian names, and I wanted a short, sweet name, not a long name, not a name that had gulab in it, something that sounded good to the Western ear. And my name is Dana, so I thought it would start with a D. And I was a botany student at the university, so plants were really important to me. And I was we just finished growing tulsi, so I was looking for all sacred plants. And it was like a quest to find Kusha. That was the next one that was on my list. And I didn't think anything of that, but I wanted a short, sweet name, and I wanted these particular beads. Nobody had. I'd seen them once, and they were the little murdunga-shaped beads. So I thought, oh, probably a far-out desire. But still, I wanted them. So when my name came and my beads came, they came in a thread box. And Prabhupada, I still have the paper. Prabhupada wrote Danya Minton, that was my name. And it was around the beads, and it was the exact beads I wanted. Exactly. They were sent from India. Srila Prabhupada was in India at the time. And I was so shocked that my name was Kusha, because it was like Srila Prabhupada knew right what I was looking for. He not only gave me everything I wanted, he gave me more than what I wanted, because he let me know he knew exactly who I was and where my head was at. So that was how Srila Prabhupada was. You wanted one thing, and it's like you wanted shards of glass, and he gave you diamonds. It was always a trade up, and so he kept you amazed. It wasn't ordinary. You weren't just like, oh, settling for something. Oh, yeah, I got what I wanted. No, he gave you more than.
Very good.
Krishna.
Thank you. He more or less read your heart or your mind or both. So that's compassionate to be able to fulfill your desire like that. Anangamandri, Prabhu, you had a second initiation and a garland regarding Kripa city, or
Yes.
you know what I'm speaking
Yeah, Kripa.
of? Yeah.
I always say I'm a Kripa devotee, just mercy. So we were in Gainesville. Prabhupada had come just for, I think, one night, basically 2 days and one night. And I was to get my Brahmin initiation, so they told me, go in the room. So I went in the room, and it was only Prabhupada sitting there. And he nodded, and he said, so sit down, very gravely, because Brahmin initiation is a very grave thing. I had no idea how grave or serious. So I sit down. I felt like a little puppy dog. I said, sit. So I'm looking at him, and he's leaning over near me, and he says, so repeat after me, Om Bor Bhuva Swa, And I kind of knew the finger movements, so I thought, oh, I know the finger movements, because sometimes we chant japa on that if we didn't have our beads. And but we didn't know much Sanskrit. At least I didn't know hardly any Sanskrit. And so I'm going, Om Bor Bhuva, and then I just lost it. And he's saying, repeat. I said, repeat. Om Bor Bhuva, and then I couldn't say the rest of it. And he says, they did not give you a paper with the mantra on it? I said, no, Prabhupada, no one gave me a paper. And then he just said, okay. He said, never mind. And he went like this again. And then he said, you can go. He said, tomorrow Hridayananda will give you the mantra. So he just went like that. And I thought, okay, I'll get it from Hridayananda tomorrow. And so I'm walking out backwards because I didn't want to turn my back to him. So I'm kind of walking out backwards, and I had my hands full. I'm going, thank you, Prabhupada, thank you, thank you. And then he just had this huge smile on his face, picked up the garland off his desk and threw it at me with a big smile, So that was my Brahmin initiation. I got a garland and a smile. And I thought, that's cool. I accepted that. That was great, because that's kind of my nature, I think. As you were saying, you're an over-endeavorer. I'm an under-endeavorer. I do the least amount that I can get away with. And so I felt like, oh, he's accepting me, even though I don't know Sanskrit. I didn't get the mantra. I didn't get, the whole thing. And then later on, the next day after Prabhupada left, we had a little fire yajna, and Hridayananda was doing the fire yajna, and there was another couple getting married. And we didn't have enough bananas going around. So there was... I think the groom had a banana, and I got a banana. So I gave my banana to the girl because I thought, these things aren't important. It's like I don't need the banana. I'm here. Prabhupada has blessed me. So I never got the banana in the fire either. So someone can say, well, then she's not a Brahmin because she didn't get the mantra from him. She didn't get, but Prabhupada was accepting. So that's his compassion for those who can't do all those other things like me. And yeah, that's his compassion, and he accepted anyway. And thank you, Prabhupada. So,
Pass the mic to Malati. Malati, you were one of the 6 devotees who were lucky enough and able to go to London.
There were 7 of us.
7. Oh, Tamal, was he the?
No, baby Saraswati.
Oh, Saraswati, excuse me, right. Can't leave her out. So tell us about that time that you went to Montreal to see Prabhupada on your way. And tell us any instructions that he gave you, and was he compassionate to little Saraswati and exchanges?
Saraswati was 6 weeks old.
Okay. That came later.
No, it came right away.
Okay, tell us about that.
So we arrived. San Francisco, stopped, changed planes, Chicago to Montreal. And we arrived, and of course we wanted to see Prabhupada. And we were living we were going to stay in the temple, and the temple was a converted bowling alley. So we had our own private room. Everybody lived there had a private room. There was clotheslines stretched and crisscrossed, and there were sheets pinned up to the clothesline. So your private room was a little room with the sheets and the clotheslines, the clothespins holding it up. So myself and Janaki, let's go find Swamiji. Well, how are we going to know where he is? We'll just walk around until we see some orange cloth hanging out, which we did. We found some orange. We saw it. We went up, knocked on the door, and Govinda Dasi answered. She was serving with Gaurasundar at that time. And she turned, she goes, Swamiji, the devotees from San Francisco have arrived. And we were invited to step in. And I'm standing there, I'm holding the baby. And he goes, oh, this very morning I dreamt about this very child. This very morning I dreamt about this very child. He said it twice. And I was so happily stunned. I didn't even say, oh, what was the dream? And just the acknowledgement was sufficient, and he didn't offer any more, so I've never felt any loss. Then, during that time, it was Janmashtami and then Guru Puja, the Vyasa Puja. So on the day of the Vyasa Puja, we had as much as you could cook in the situation. So I'm sitting, because we're leaving we're actually going to leave that afternoon after the Vyasa Puja. But I'm thinking, we never see him again. So I was always right up in front with my baby under the sari on the breast, kept her quiet. And just in case you might think that was what? Shocking. Srila Prabhupada, in a letter to Krishna Devi later acknowledged, because apparently she was having trouble with the people in her little situation and her little baby. He says, well, I have noticed Malati is always nursing the baby and the child is quiet. So he had no problem with that. Anyhow, so I'm there with the baby under the sari. She's 6 weeks old, and he calls me up. He says, put out your hand, and from his plate, he plops a gulab jamun, nice, juicy. And he goes, it's for the baby. And my stupid little mother brain was going, but she's only 6 weeks old, and, solid food for the first 6 months. And my brain was going spinning around. And then I thought, wait a minute, because he had taken a bite out of it. And so I sat down and I put that gulab jamun where he bit by her mouth. And the only thing babies do, they'll suck. So she was getting that maha juice from Srila Prabhupada. And I got to finish off the rest of it. So then we were leaving, and we were going We had no, contact at all on the other side. Our plan was simply meet the Beatles and get them to chant. We had no address, we had no financial wherewithal, and we never knew if we would see Prabhupada again. That was the thing. So I had seen that people from India would touch his feet, and I also noted he didn't really seem to like it too much. But at the same time, I'm thinking, we need all the help we can get. We need the mercy, we need the benediction. So I had Govinda Dasi ask if we, the devotees from San Francisco, could touch his lotus feet. And he agreed. So he's sitting at his little low desk, like a coffee table, sitting on the ground on pillows behind. We came in, there was some pleasantries, last-minute instructions, and then he moves the desk aside and he extends his beautiful lotus feet. So one by one we put our head on his feet, and he was rubbing with his hand. And somehow I'm holding the baby in one arm and doing this. He would rub behind our neck, the bottom of our neck, and when he did that, it was like this surcharge came through the body. And I knew at that moment we would be successful. I didn't know how, there was no time frame, no explanation, but I was assured that we would be successful. Jamuna came, former Catholic, she grabs his feet and kissed them, So now we've all had our, turn. And he looks at me and he says, hand me the baby. Actually, he would say the child. So I hand him, and he's sitting there. He has a garland around his neck. I hand the child. So she's like this. He's holding her. She's facing out, and he flips his garland over both of them. And then he has this cheeky little smile, and he goes, and now they will say, what kind of sannyas is he? Because he had been saying how his Guru Maharaj had sent sannyasis to England, but they had not been successful. He goes, I'm sending grihastas. And we all knew at that point that he had been criticized for his activities in the West. So now he's holding Saraswati, he's got the garland encircling, and he goes, and now they will say, what kind of sannyas is he?
Well, that's compassionate for
Hare
sure.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Sweet.
We know what kind of sannyas
Yes.
he is and loves.
All right. Kusha, can you tell us the experience you had about ladies doing artiques and the need for them to be Brahmins?
I'll tell you that, but to continue with her story about lotus feet Padasevana.
Go ahead.
In Srila Prabhupada, we were in San Francisco, and he came. And these congregation, it was 1972 or 3, I'm not sure what, no, it must have been 72. And these congregation members gave their place for Prabhupada to stay. And so we were recovering, cleaning, painting, wherever Prabhupada came smelled like fresh paint. And I was doing some last stitching like we do, covering some sitting place for Prabhupada. We had been trained, we better make sure there's no pins in it. You have to, Jai Shri can tell you this story. This is a Jai Shri story, but from Jai Shri's experience, I knew I better make sure there's no pins. And in being so careful, I was there when Prabhupada came. And Prabhupada immediately called this compassion. See, Srila Prabhupada, the purport or the meaning of an experience with Srila Prabhupada, it gains momentum and wisdom and love and devotion over time. You understand more and more about what happened. The more you think about, contemplate it, re-experience it. So I realized how compassionate, because Prabhupada was teaching us Padasevana. He called for water to have his legs bathed and his feet bathed. I was an impersonalist, yogini, when I came. I literally distributed the book, The Impersonal Life. I got them by the case. I was that intense about being an impersonalist. And Prabhupada was teaching us Padasevana and allowing us to wash his legs and feet. That's so intimate. That's so generous to do that. Who does that? He invited us to come and wash his legs to refresh him. And when I think about it, it just makes me melt and just want to cry and cry like a baby. The intimacy and how he dissolved our impersonal conception by teaching us to be loving human beings, to comfort one another. So the Padasevana, Prabhupada really gave a lot. And there are stories about even him receiving Guru Puja, knowing he was taking our sins. Talk about compassion. He knew full well what he was doing. He was giving us the power, the Agyata Sukriti, empowering, and taking away the unwanted things simultaneously. It just breathtaking.
Ananga Manjari, we have 5 minutes before Artik. A reporter once asked Prabhupada about a statement that women are less smart.
Oh, yes.
This ring of
we were
store.
in Prabhupada's room here in L.A., and one reporter asked him, there was maybe about 15 devotees, and a devotee said, Prabhupada, you say women are less intelligent. Can you explain that? And he said, anyone who comes to Krishna consciousness is most intelligent because everyone else is less intelligent, basically. That's what he was saying. I wanted to just say one more thing about his compassion with me when I told the previous story about him asking me, what do you want to do? So 2 months later, or 2 or 3 months later after Hridayananda had taken sannyas, and that is just around the time in 72 when the movement started saying women can't do things. Women can't lead kirtan. Women can't be preachers. Women can't give class and things like that. So I was getting bewildered because that was what I thought I gave up everything for him to do that. And so I wrote a letter to Prabhupada, and I wrote, Prabhupada, I'm an 18-year-old girl. My husband had just taken sannyas, so I have no man in charge of me. And I want to know if I can study your books and give classes in your temples and be a preacher for you, for your mission, to spread your mission, help you. And he wrote back, yes. He said, you do this, read my books and chant, focus on the holy name. He made a point to focus on the holy name. And then he said, and read my books. And then you will be a great preacher, you will have great success, and you will be a great example for our society. So he was saying in ISKCON. So he's telling a 17-year-old girl who had no man in charge of them to become great. Not just, yes, you can do this, it's fine, sentimentally. But of course I didn't do it, and that's why I come here when you invited me. Thank you, just because I feel an obligation to try to at least share whatever I do know. But yeah, so he's telling every 17-year-old or 70-year-old or anyone, woman, man, doesn't matter, child, to be a missionary for Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya's compassionate mission of love and humility. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. Let's have a round of applause for these ladies and their association with Srila Prabhupada and his compassion.